Hello internet, welcome to the channel. My name's Frankie, and in today's video we are building for one of the kind of hallmark animals for conservation efforts in zoo, an animal that is only kept in collections in Asia, meaning you won't see it in any other zoo outside of the continent of Asia, and that is one of the strangest looking primates there is, the Proboscis monkey. Of course, getting the name from the strange shaped nose. It's kind of like a miniature trunk almost. I only recently found out that that is what the snout on a tapir is called as well, so that is obviously just the name of that chunky kind of shape on the front of an animal's face is called the proboscis. Yeah, so we're going to be building for those animals today, and we are so very loosely going to be basing this habitat on the one for the animal in Singapore Zoo. That is one of the only places you can see it in the world. And they have a nice, fairly private enclosure. You can only see it from one kind of viewing gallery. It's a glass area that you can look through, kind of to help the animals not breathe in our germs, because quite a few primates are really sensitive to human diseases and stuff, and they're just not used to the kind of things that we carry, but they are susceptible to it. Because of how closely related we are to most primates, they can get our diseases fairly easily, so we want to prevent contact where we can with animals like this, especially when they are so important in terms of conservation and stuff. We need to ensure their health is a priority at all times. So yeah, as you can see, just before I continue that little talk, I just sunk a tree into the ground to make a bush. This is something that a lot of creators do, and I haven't really experimented with it, but I think I'm going to try doing it from time to time just for a bit of variation, because in this zoo there's like one bush that I use all over the place and it gets a little bit repetitive, so sinking trees might be an option for a bit of variety in our zoo. Yeah, anyway, back to the build. The idea is to have a glass viewing gallery at the front that's going to be kind of sheltered to ensure that our guests are only seeing it from one angle, giving the monkeys a bit of privacy and whatnot, and just ensuring that they have a fairly, I don't know, making sure the animals are prioritized rather than the guests in this instance. We are going to go a little bit crazy in terms of foliage in this habitat. These animals live in quite dense mangroves and forests and stuff, so we're going to be replicating that, kind of like what we did with the cassowary. We're going to be going absolute ham with all of the foliage. We're going to cover this place, make sure it's proper dense. And in the center of the habitat we're going to have a climbing frame so that our guests can see the animals using their enrichment items nice and clearly. But this climbing frame is going to be one that I got from the workshop. As some of you may know, if you've been watching the channel for a little while, I don't really like building the climbing frames. I want to get better at it, and I think maybe at some point I will go into sandbox mode and play about, make a few climbing frames and then save them as blueprints. That's probably a smart idea, but for now I thought I would download one from the workshop, and it's a really nice one. I'm really happy with it, and I'm going to pop it right in the center of the habitat. It's got loads of different platforms and stuff. It's got some rope as well, which is pretty cool, and that's going to allow our monkeys plenty of climbing room aside from the trees we're going to be putting in here as well. As for the rest of the enrichment, we just want to make sure that it's spread out across the habitat to ensure our animals are using the whole habitat, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to use a smaller climbing frame in the water. The Proboscis monkey is pretty well known for enjoying a good swim and all that, so I thought it'd be kind of cool if it had a platform inside its water area as well, so that it could do a little climbing if it wanted to. Yeah, that's kind of it. I'm going to stop talking for a minute so that you can enjoy all of the plant life and get Floki's fact for the day, and then we'll come back to talk about the guest viewing area and other little bits and bobs in a minute. So this guest viewing gallery at the front did require a little bit of experimentation, and what I mean by that is I tried to lay out the walls and stuff using some of the log walls that I believe you get from the base game, so anyone can make this style of viewing gallery if you want. Yeah, I experimented using certain pieces of this, making sure that the doorway is tall enough or low enough that the guests can fit through without too much space above their head, because often I find that the doorways I make are way too tall. It just looks a bit strange. However, I didn't really like how they joined onto the glass. It just does not sit right with me, so I decided to start over and use some slightly bigger pieces. I'm going to go a little bit taller, and even though I was just talking about the height of the doorways, I did feel like the 2 meters was a little bit short. Anybody that is more than like 6 foot, they're going to be worrying about knocking their head, I guess. It's one of those things, even though you know that you're safe from hitting your head, you kind of worry about it. Yeah. Anyway, what I'm going to do to ensure that it doesn't look too strange with having the wood joining onto the glass is go into the barrier editing mode, and then on console, by holding triangle, or I believe it's Y on Xbox, you can move the individual fence posts, and this is so much more useful for when you're trying to get a specific look like this. I'm also going to lower the top of the glass panel to just meet the top of this viewing gallery. The animals aren't going to be able to climb over the top, they are perfectly safe. So yeah, we're just going to adjust that slightly. I was experimenting with how we could make some kind of hot wire here. I was looking at the different art shapes and stuff, but they don't go small enough. So instead I opt for the hinge that comes with the base game. All I did was search the word hinge, and it's literally the first one there. I'm going to sink that into the wooden beam, and then using the grasslands pole, this does come from the grassland pack, and it's one of the thinnest pieces we have in the game, so it's pretty useful for things like this. I can line that up with the hinge, and then just copy and paste it to kind of stretch it to the other end of this glass barrier. And then select all of the poles and the hinges, copy and paste them up, and there we have a nice hot wire looking kind of design, meaning that we can have above the viewing gallery be open, but ensure that if the animals try to climb out, there is something blocking them, because we do not want the Proboscis Monkey getting out, and it's not exactly going to hurt people, is it? But like I was saying earlier about them being more susceptible to human diseases, we want to protect them as much as we can, ensure they're not making contact with humans, and I mean, just general rule of thumb, if you work in a zoo, don't be letting any animals out. It's kind of normal to do that, I think. You may have noticed that the viewing gallery also sees partly underwater. I really like this idea, as the Proboscis Monkey is quite well known for its liking of swimming. So we want to ensure that our guests can get a decent look at that as well if they do decide to go for a little paddle up to the glass. And there's something about this nice sheltered looking viewing gallery that makes me think that it'd be kind of nice to have a seat and watch a Proboscis Monkey swinging about on their climbing frames and trees inside. And with that in mind, I'm going to place a couple benches inside this viewing gallery. I'm also going to create a floor just so that we don't have the grass either side of the path. It looks a little strange. For the rest of the zoo, it's completely fine. But when you're going inside, you're inside now, you're in this viewing gallery. It looks a bit strange to then just have grass. So by placing a few log wall floor pieces, it masks that and it looks good. So we can place some donation bins and benches in here, and we're also going to put an education board in between the benches. And I've really quite enjoyed using some of the frames recently. I might maybe consider getting into making some custom frames soon. I hadn't really thought about that until talking about it right now. But for this one in particular, I'm just going to use the light wood Planet Zoo frame. Ideally, it would be darker. It really stands out on that dark wood, but you know, I don't mind too much. Something that we are trying to do across this zoo is make sure that we're using sustainable products like wood and metal. We're using those as much as possible throughout this zoo, so using a wooden frame with the education board kind of makes sense. Now we're just going to fill the gap behind the viewing gallery and the main path with a bunch of plants that are indigenous to the area of tropical Africa. Those are the two filters I've chosen, biome tropical and continent Africa, to ensure that the plants kind of match what's in the rest of the zoo. As you can see, there's a lot of plant life going on around it as well. And yeah, that's kind of it. We're now going to have a little look at the cinematics, see how this habitat looks in all of its glory. Thank you so much for having watched this video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more like this. Let me know what you want to see in the comments down below. And until next time, I will see you later.